Well, I'm deeply touched to be here with you. First of all, to hear such encouraging words about me spoken by, I think, Vidya Rao, written and something to please me. Most of it is not true, it's half true. So, I am also very happy to begin lecturing after a gap of almost 2 years. I was not well, and so I have resumed now. And so, to begin at such a wonderful place as Jain University, which is doing uh, exemplary work. I had come here once about 20 years ago to offer a workshop, and now that I'm back here and have this opportunity, and in this program, the Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts has also joined hands, which makes it all the more homely for me. So I'll come now to the topic of the day, that how can music and dance contribute to a revival or a resurgence in modern Indian theatre. So the problem may not appear to you as a problem, but some of us who want to think about theater very deeply, and theater in context of not just modernity but the whole tradition, they find that Indian theater today is split into almost two streams. One is the urban theater, which is played in big cities like Bangalore and Chennai and Trivandrum, Bombay, Delhi, etc. And the other is what is called very often as folk theater or traditional theater. If you want to make it very respectable, then you say traditional theater. Otherwise, you just say it is folk theater or it is popular theater. This is the division. Now, urban theater is very largely the theater which India inherited from the British. It is the modern realistic theater which was taught to Indians by the British when they had kind of formed a government here, and when they had their administrators for a long period of time and their families, and they wanted to see their own theater which they saw in England here. So that's how the modern European theater came to India, almost at the end of 18th, almost at the end of, yeah, 18th century in Bengal, and that continued, and that grew as theater of the Indian languages, as Bengali theater, as Tamil theater, Hindi theater, Marathi theater, and we know our theater today as theater of a single language, which was not the case about 400 years ago. For instance, if you see Kudiyattam, then there is Sanskrit in it. Sometimes there is this other language which is closer to Sanskrit, but it's an entirely different language actually. And then there is Malayalam. So it is still a multilingual theater like the ancient Indian theater. But modern theater, theater in the cities, is the realistic theater which is performed. And now that we have a Sahitya Academy and a Sangeet Natak Academy that has categorized and recognized and given credence to these different performing arts in this post British scenario. So it is not a unified picture of Indian tradition. It is actually the post 19th century, the 20th century situation in which India has now a unilingual theater in different languages. And then there is the remnant of the ancient theater as folk forms or traditional forms such as Bhavai, Kudiyattam, Terukutu, Bailata, etc. etc. Now, these two streams are still very separate. The modern realistic theater of the urban has also a huge position in the film world because actors coming from this modern theater, realistic theater, they go into film, so they have something to look forward to. They can make a career there, they can make name and fame, and there is a future. But the other form, Bhavai, etc., Kudiyattam, Tirukutu, etc., they are, as a matter of fact, shrinking because the audience has either shrunk too much or it is almost disappeared. Then there is another form which can be called dance or nritya, which survives in 7, 8 classical and semi classical forms, Bharatnatyam, Kuchipudi, etc., which actually is a continuation of temple dance. Not Natya as it was played, let us say, 1000 years ago. Not theater, not drama, but it is largely abhinaya, ekahariya abhinay, a single person doing abhinay, telling a story, and then there are musicians singing. So, this is a form which was actually the form of the temple performance, aradhana. It was archana, part of the archana uh, of the gods. So when dancing in the temples came to an end, very well, luckily our temple dances continued to be survive in the modern auditorium and develop a audience for themselves. But the unified form of theater in which there is speech and dance and music and sign language and costume and everything which existed when a play like Abhigyan Shakuntalam or Swapnavasav Dattam or Mrichakatikam was performed 2000 years ago, that theater does not exist. That theater ceased to exist almost 1,000 years ago, as a matter of fact, even more. So, my question is that not just to revive the ancient, total ancient form which existed and which is described so beautifully in the Natya Shastra, not just to revive that, but also to create a dialogue between these three separate performing traditions: the urban tradition of Eurocentric or Euro inheritance in the town, which is a unilingual theater, which of course has produced very eminent playwrights and has produced excellent literature no doubt, but it is a form which has its own limitations and which does not gel with the tradition. It stands out as something separate. And the traditional dance, temple dance, and the traditional folk forms, so called traditional forms and folk forms. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to keep them distinct? The Sangeet Natak Academy keeps them distinct. It gives prizes according to the categories. We all know it. So once you give patronage according to a category, the category then tends to kind of ossify or keep its limits. It will not gel into another category, not take exchanges. जैसे अरे साहब वो तो डांस करते हैं हम थिएटर करते हैं. This is something which I hear all the time from the theater world. And of course, prizes and patronage and fellowships and scholarships, junior and senior, all that is given according to this category. But obviously, art suffers because art is creation. Art is not just blind repetition of a particular genre. It must reach out of its boundary, learn from another art form, learn from another sister form, create something new, create a different form, and entertain the audience in a different manner, and also create a different audience. How will that be done? Now, uh, one of my preoccupation for the last 2 or 3 years has been to give a new syllabus to the National School of Drama with the cooperation of several uh, theater persons. This was achieved, this was done. National School of Drama was largely doing uh, modern realistic theater because it was founded sometime around 1958 or so, and its first director was a very powerful, creative man, a director, Mr. Ibrahim Al Qazi. But what was taught in the school was largely European theatre. Now, for the first time, an attempt has been made by the National School of Drama to incorporate ancient theatre, medieval theatre, and modern theatre into its syllabus, and not just to talk about it or to quote books about it, but to actually practice it. Everything is practiced so that some ancient theatre is practiced, some medieval forms are practiced, and modern Indian theatre is practiced. So here we come back to the problem. How are we going to create dialogue? What would be the method of creating? And what would be the method of actually bringing these three or four forms together? Of course, some people might say that uh, why not continue with the purity of a form? But I think that is again a limited vision. I mean, nobody would object to continuation of the cultivation of certain existing forms. Let us say, like an Ashtapadi of Gitu Govind. So, different Ashtapadis are performed in all forms, from Odissi to uh, Kudiyattam, not Kudiyattam and Kathakali, but the Kerala form of Mohiniyattam. They are all done this way. But the strict form of the dancer not speaking, that is maintained. On the other hand, in folk forms, there is a very strong local element which is enforced by costume, by tradition, by stories, and restrictions of the form. Now, expanding the form according to a new context and a new story is the crux of the matter. For instance, and I mean, this is something I'm throwing at you, and we have here a creative artist, Sheshadri, right among us, who performs, and this is something which I'm sure he would be able to uh, resolve in one of your future creations, to bring in that element which has been for some reason or the other prohibited so far. You see, if you look at the essential definition of Abhinay and theater or dance or whatever form is an Abhinay, then it has to be fourfold: Angik, Vachik, Satvik, and Aharya. Now, if the Bharatnatyam dancer is not speaking, is not singing, right, then she is not doing any Vachik. The Vachik is done therefore by the vocalists, by the singers, by the musicians. And then there is only one character who dances. What has happened is, this is what I have seen over 25, 30 years, that now, in order to match the Western performance, they have multiplied the number of persons dancing on the Indian stage. So the ICCR says, well, why do you just bring in one person? She may perform wonderful Satvik Abhinay and this and that, but this is not enough. We want 20 people on the stage. We want 10 people on the stage. And if ICCR, which is one great patron, promotes this, then the whole trend starts. So, what you do then is, instead of one dancer, you have 5 or 6 or 10, and you make all kinds of choreographies, but that is not specifically Abhinay. That is an intervention in between the Abhinay. So you can put all kinds of things, you can make all kinds of gulmas and all kinds of different things in between. Then you go ahead with the story. Then there are 5 people performing the same Angik Abhinay, which takes away from the concentration on it. You can't see the Satvik Abhinay of 5 dancers together, can you? You just can't. Just as in music, if 2 people are singing or 3 people are singing, then you can't appreciate the bhava of a single singer. This is not an art which is meant for group work. So something has to be done in order to in order to create a very different forms. I think my basic concern is that if Natya is to be, if Natya is to be performed in all its variety, hello, yeah, if Natya is to be performed in all its variety, then these boundaries have to be broken. But when you break boundaries or when you borrow, then you just don't put things together for the sake of putting them together. You organically create something. Now, here my concern today in this talk is about creating theater in which there is music, dance, and expression in theater, so that the gap between urban theater and the traditional theater is filled. Which does not mean, I mean, I'm not proposing that you radically change the forms and the styles as they exist. They, of course, continue their lives and they do things as, but you create a new form. You create a form in theater in which Angik Abhinay is inducted, in which speech is inducted, in which various other hastamudras and abhinayas are inducted. And this is where the theater people can do nothing. They have to learn from the art forms of the dancers. It is the dancers who have to do it. Now, attempts have been made. Attempts have been made in producing a play in which this kind of abhinay had been incorporated. And there have been uh, various directors or theater producers uh, who have done it. But then, because they were working within a single style, they stuck to their style only. So when Panikar produced Abhigyan Shakuntalam, then the whole thing was entirely weaving around the Kerala style of Abhinay, the Kerala style of Angik movement. Or if somebody else does it from Gujarat, then they would take their very local style. It is not creating a language which could be called widely all India, or which could be seen and perceived and practiced in different parts of India. So, this is one of the major problems. Again, the speech, the language. You see, modern Indian theatre has split into different languages. Now we have Marathi theatre, Telugu theatre, Kannada theatre, etc. But ancient theatre was not that. Ancient theatre, unfortunately, is wrongly taught and called, even by great Pandits, great scholars, as Sanskrit theatre. But I hope you all know that in ancient times, Sanskrit was only maybe 5% or 10%, or not even that in ancient plays. It consisted of various other languages, and all music and musical compositions in theatre ancient times were never in Sanskrit. They were always in Magadhi, Ardha Magadhi, that is the modern day Bihari area. That so it was a multilingual theatre. Now, if you have to create a form which is beyond, which is more than regional theatre, or which is more than a single language theater, if you have to go back to the richness and variety of the Indian form, then we should be able to create a multilingual theater, a play in which three or four languages are used. Just as the ancient audience was able to follow three or four languages, I am sure the modern Indian audience will be able to follow that also, because you not only see, no, you not only hear the language and refer to the story in terms of the language, but you see the action, you see the whole story, and the play is not lost about you. So, the creation of a new theater would involve a coming together of people from different genres, because it is only those who practice who can create something new. A theoretician like me can only think about it. See, he can envision it, but the actual creation of it, the actual doing of it, this is something which will be done by practitioners. And it is possible only by the method of hit and trial, because it is not a well defined territory. It is a territory in which small experiments are done, in which certain things are opened, in which a fresh thinking is introduced, and then these various experiments done in different parts of the country, they can bring the totality into a wider reality. So this is the idea that I had, that creation of a new theater or induction of song, music, and dance into modern theater would involve a deep involvement of the people who know the traditional forms. I would say it is actually the responsibility of those who know dance, those who know Abhinay, because they are the ones who really can contribute. Now, even to teach some kind of imagined ancient theater, or how Abhinay was done in ancient times, we need modern dancers. You see, because the text would say, okay, these are the different nritya hastas, khatkamukh, etc., etc. But how are they done, and where are they to be employed, and how are they to be done? This is only what the dancer can do. Or in music, it's somebody who knows classical music and incorporate it. Not that people are not present in doing it. There are people who are highly efficient, but that just a fresh thinking is required. And this thinking is required and to be done not only in just one part of the country. So you see, if we are trying to evolve a practical syllabus at National School of Drama, the National School of Drama in Delhi alone cannot go very far. Such things have to be practiced and done in various parts of the country, because it is only the variety of the practitioners who can create a novelty. Unless that novelty is made acceptable to an audience, because what you really have to do is to create an audience for it. It is not a laboratory exercise. It's not something which is done in the Jain University or at NSD as an experiment. It is something which has to be presented to the audience. The audience has to like it, accept it, or reject it, and that way it is a new art form. Then there is the concern of performing something which the modern audience will like. It has to be related to the life of present day India, present day Indians, especially young Indians. And the stories have to be of that kind. The concerns have to be of that sort. Once they are done, now it is in this that theater becomes important, because for the traditional art forms, the stories are set. Some art forms like Kathak have become very, very limited. Nothing beyond Radha Krishna, you see, not even Shiv Parvati, because Kathak does not have much of a language about that kind of uddhata, or that kind of rigorous dancing. It's always dance with softness and nazakat and things like, because that's the tradition. So I believe that the effort to get associated with theater on the part of dancers is going to give them a new repertoire. You see, if you open up and cooperate with another art form, then you create for yourself a more creative art form. You can make the art form which you are practicing more creative, more open, or you can make it uh, totally a different art form. Now, I have seen that many people have made attempts to create something new in very specific art forms. For instance, there was a dancer in the south, I forget her name, Chitralekha or somebody. You know, she created a very simplified, denuded, almost denuded form of Bharatnatyam dance. You see, so it became a style of dancing. Now, if you just create that a particular embellishment or giving a different style to already existing style, what you do is nothing new, because the style then has its own limitations already. So it is just singing. If you are singing Thumri, okay, today I'll sing Thumri of Banarasang, tomorrow of Punjabang. So if I put Murkis, it will become Punjab. It doesn't go very far. So this kind of a reform within a setup is not the future. The future comes when you bring the whole art of Natya in one big expanse. As a matter of fact, these art forms as they exist today, they have come into existence after the splintering of the big tradition. You see, when the full theater practices in ancient India came to an end around 900 or 1000 AD, after the Islamic invasion, particularly in the north, when theater was more or less banned, or when temples disappeared, and even in the south, it survived largely in the context of ashramas and bhakti, not in terms of secular concerns or daily life stories, but art which was dedicated to either Krishna or dedicated to Rama, Vaishnava Bhakti. So, all over India, it was within the context of that. That was one big limitation that happened. Now that we are out of that limitation, so we need to see the whole tradition once again. The total Natya Shastra, or the total art as it was practiced, we need to see it again. And if we are going to see it, then we are going to utilize it. Utilizing means that you practice, that you create things. Of course, attempts have been made. For instance, Uday Shankar's attempt, right? Uday Shankar took styles and different postures from, uh, something from here, something from there, and he was able to create. But then it was still dance. It was limited to dance. It was not Angik, Vachik, Sattvic, and Aharya. It was not theater. It was not telling a story. It was not a full length drama. It was presenting something in a different style. Or you may call, as I think you call it, what Bani. Sometimes, as you say that, okay, this is a Mysore Bani or this is some other, which means gharana or a particular stream of education. I am talking of something which is reviving each form into a new form, keeping, of course, the old tradition, but also adding to it, and to create a theater which is a wider, big theater, which is also a multilingual theater, which can travel across the length and breadth of the country, and which is independent of the most common medium of entertainment today, the film. You see, the film, of course, will take its own course. The film, of course, is already changed in many ways. The film has already changed away from realism into some kind of magic world, and it is dependent upon new technologies. This art, which is largely the art of the body of the actor, body of the dancer, actor, abhineta, no matter what you call him or her, that is not going to change. You are not going to go beyond the limits of your body, but that you are going to expand the imaginative application of your body. So I think if if we want to create new forms within our old forms, and if we want to create new theater, new dance, and similarly new music. I don't have time today to go into music because music again suffers from that kind of limitation today. As a matter of fact, uh, music does not touch the contemporary poets. Taking an example from the north, all compositions are sung in Brij Bhasha, which was spoken 150 years ago. So there is no khayal which is sung in Urdu or in Hindi. There have been great Hindi poets, Sumitranandan Pant, Mahadevi Verma, who are very musical, but nobody sings any composition. We have not devised a method of singing composition. As a matter of fact, singing a composition is a fading art in the north. In in the southern part of the country, because the kriti is still the center of expression, and even if you are playing violin, you are actually performing a kriti. So the kriti and the words and the pallavi, anupallavi, etc., it is all maintained. But in the north it has disappeared. So it is again that the Indian performing arts are facing a crisis themselves. I mean, maybe it's very presumptuous of me to say so. You can always come around and tell me who the hell are you to say these things about art. But if we are going to uh, put our minds to what is really happening, then we have to see what is happening. That the doors are closed, the doors are not opening. An innovative ventures are not to be seen. So, what we are seeing a lot, particularly in the field of music, all over the country, is a lot of technical excellence, wizardry. The grr, grr. We have had this kind of expression, or great mastery on the flute or on the veena, but not in developing something which is fundamentally different. So I gave you uh, something which I have been thinking about. Please treat it more as a concern, not as a criticism, not as any evaluation, but only as a sincere desire to see that new doors open and that new fountains of creativity gush forth. Thank you very much. I'll be very happy to take questions and discuss things with you.